There are moments in life when you wake up and feel an invisible weight pressing on your chest. Not pain, not sadness, just emptiness. A quiet voice inside saying, "I can't do this today." And for some reason you feel guilty about it. You beat yourself up for feeling tired, unmotivated, or disconnected. But what if that lack of energy isn't a failure? What if it's communication? What if your soul is whispering something you've ignored for too long? When you have no energy to do anything, it's rarely about laziness. It's a message, your mind, your heart, your body, your spirit, aligning to tell you something essential. You've been living out of sync with what you truly need. Maybe you've been giving too much and receiving too little. Maybe you've been performing a life on the outside that doesn't match who you are on the inside. Maybe you've been running so fast that you forgot what you were running toward. Fatigue isn't always a sign to stop, it's a sign to listen. Your low energy is saying, pause, reflect, realign. You're not meant to live every day exhausted, depleted, or disconnected. You're meant to live with purpose, intention, and meaning. And sometimes the only way your soul can get your attention is by shutting everything else down. When you feel drained, it's not the end, it's the beginning of reconnection, rediscovery, and rebuilding your inner strength. Your soul isn't trying to break you, your soul is trying to wake you. And when you start listening, when you begin honoring what you truly feel, what you truly need, and what you truly desire, energy returns, not forced energy, not artificial motivation, but the powerful, quiet energy that comes from being aligned with who you really are. So today, don't judge your low energy, understand it. It's not weakness, it's guidance. It's your soul saying, lack of energy is not laziness, it's communication from your inner self, a message often whispered quietly beneath the noise of daily responsibilities, expectations, and the pressure to always keep going. When you feel drained, unmotivated, or unable to engage with life in the way you normally do, it's easy to blame yourself. You may tell yourself you're not disciplined enough, not strong enough, not trying hard enough. But the truth is much deeper than that. Your lack of energy is a signal, a form of inner guidance, inviting you to look closely at what is happening within you rather than pushing yourself harder on the outside. Every human being has an emotional, physical, and spiritual threshold. When life becomes too overwhelming, when you've been carrying stress silently, when your boundaries have been ignored or crossed, when your environment is draining you, or when you're disconnected from what gives you meaning, your inner self begins sending warnings. Low energy is one of the first signs. It's a natural protective response, a way of slowing you down so you can pay attention to what needs healing or realignment. Your body and soul are not working against you. They are trying to save you from burnout, disconnection, or collapse. Sometimes this inner communication is subtle, like feeling mentally foggy or emotionally flat. Other times it hits harder, difficulty getting out of bed, losing interest in things you once enjoyed, or struggling to complete even simple tasks. Instead of viewing these moments as failures, consider them invitations. They are asking you to pause long enough to understand what part of you has been neglected. Maybe you've ignored your emotional needs for too long, numbing yourself just to survive. Maybe you've overextended your energy, trying to please others at the cost of your own well-being. Maybe your soul is signaling that the path you're on no longer aligns with who you truly are or who you're becoming. This internal message also reminds you that you are not a machine. You are not designed to operate at high speed every day without rest, reflection, or renewal. Your energy levels fluctuate for a reason. They tell you when it's time to pull back, recharge, or reevaluate your direction. Instead of forcing yourself to push through exhaustion, listen to what the fatigue is trying to reveal. It might be pointing to emotional wounds that need attention, habits that need changing, or dreams you've abandoned. It might be encouraging you to release what no longer serves you, or to create space for what your heart has been quietly longing for. When you honor this communication from within, something powerful happens. Your energy slowly returns, not because you forced it, but because you created room for balance, clarity, and renewal. The moment you treat your lack of energy as meaningful rather than shameful, you reconnect with yourself, and in that reconnection you rediscover the strength, purpose, and inner vitality that were never lost, just waiting to be acknowledged. Exhaustion often signals you're living out of alignment with your true needs, and although many people mistake it for simple tiredness, it is usually something far more meaningful. When you are exhausted on a deeper level, it is not only your body that feels heavy, it is your mind, your emotions, and your spirit. This kind of fatigue is not solved by a single night of sleep or a weekend of rest. It is a message from within, indicating that something about the way you are living, choosing, or behaving does not match what your inner self actually wants or requires. In other words, you are moving through the world in a way that contradicts your authentic needs, boundaries, or desires, and your exhaustion is the natural consequence of that inner conflict. When you repeatedly ignore what you truly feel, silence your emotions, or suppress your intuition just to meet expectations or avoid disappointing others, you create a damaging internal split. Outwardly, you continue functioning, performing, and pushing, but inwardly a part of you grows weaker and more unheard. This silent part begins to show its distress through exhaustion. It's your inner self saying, "This isn't right for me, something needs to change." You cannot operate indefinitely in environments that drain you, relationships that diminish you, or routines that fail to nourish your well-being. The more you betray your own needs, the louder your body and soul speak through fatigue. This misalignment can appear in different forms. You may feel emotionally exhausted because you keep pretending to be fine when you're not. You may feel mentally exhausted because you're constantly overthinking or carrying responsibilities that don't belong to you. You may feel spiritually exhausted because you're disconnected from what gives your life meaning. You may feel physically exhausted because your lifestyle supports everything except your own health. No matter which form it takes, exhaustion is always a signal that the life you're living and the life your soul desires are not matching. Often people push themselves harder when they feel this exhaustion, believing they simply need more discipline or motivation. But forcing yourself to push through misalignment only deepens the fatigue. You can't outrun your own truth. Your energy naturally declines when you engage in work that doesn't inspire you, relationships that deplete you, standards that suffocate you, or roles that don't reflect who you truly are. Your system is protesting, trying to protect you from going deeper into a life that isn't meant for you. If you pay attention to this signal, exhaustion becomes a guide rather than an enemy. It helps you recognize what boundaries you've neglected, what dreams you've suppressed, and what parts of your life need to be released or reimagined. It urges you to slow down and reconnect with the path that feels right, not just the path that looks right from the outside. When you begin honoring your real needs instead of forcing yourself into roles or rhythms that don't fit you, your energy gradually returns, not because you rest, but because you realign. Exhaustion fades when authenticity rises, and the moment you choose alignment over expectation, your entire inner world begins to breathe again. Your soul uses fatigue to tell you it's time to pause, reflect, and realign, and although this message is often subtle, it becomes louder the longer you ignore it. Fatigue doesn't always come from lack of sleep or physical overwork. Sometimes it emerges when you've been emotionally overwhelmed, spiritually disconnected, or mentally overloaded for far too long. When you constantly push forward without checking in with yourself, your inner world begins to speak through exhaustion. It's your soul's way of guiding you back to balance, signaling that something within you needs attention, understanding, or renewal. This kind of fatigue shows up when you've been living on autopilot, moving through routines without feeling connected to what you're doing. You may notice that every task feels heavier, small things irritate you more easily, and your motivation begins to fade. You start feeling like you're functioning but not fully living. This isn't failure. It's a sign that your soul is asking you to slow down long enough to understand what you've been avoiding or suppressing. When your inner voice feels ignored, fatigue becomes the language it uses to reach you. Pausing is the first step, not stopping forever, not giving up, but simply allowing yourself to step away from the noise and pressure you're surrounded by. When you pause, you create space to feel, to breathe, to reconnect. Many people fear slowing down because they worry life will fall apart if they're not constantly productive. But your soul knows that stillness is not wasted time, it is restoration. It is the moment your inner needs finally rise to the surface, where you can see clearly what has been draining you and what has been calling for your attention. Reflection naturally follows. When fatigue pushes you inward, it encourages you to ask deeper questions. What am I truly feeling? What have I been avoiding? What boundaries have I ignored? Which parts of my life feel heavy, and which parts feel alive? Reflection allows you to acknowledge truths you may have pushed aside for the sake of responsibility or expectation. It gives you insight into the emotional weight you've been carrying, some of which may not even be yours. It also helps you reconnect with the parts of yourself that have been overshadowed by stress, external pressure, or routine. Once you pause and reflect, the final step, realignment, becomes possible. Realignment means adjusting your life to match the truth you've discovered within yourself. It may mean letting go of responsibilities that no longer align with your values, or saying no to commitments that drain your energy. It may mean prioritizing activities, people, and environments that nourish you rather than deplete you. Realignment isn't about changing everything at once. It's about choosing one honest step at a time, guided by what feels right for your inner well-being. Fatigue is not your enemy. It is a compass, a quiet but powerful guide pointing you back to yourself. When you honor its message, you begin to live in a way that supports your emotional, mental, and spiritual health. And as you realign with your truth, your energy doesn't just return, it becomes stronger, steadier, and more authentic than before. Your low energy is the beginning of transformation, not the end of your strength, even though, in the moment, it may feel like you're falling apart. When your energy drops, it's easy to think something is wrong with you, to believe you're failing, losing momentum, or becoming weaker. But low energy often appears when you're on the edge of an important shift. It shows up when the way you've been living no longer aligns with the person you're becoming. Rather than signaling defeat, this exhaustion marks the start of inner change, the quiet unraveling of patterns, beliefs, and habits that no longer serve you. Transformation rarely begins in moments of confidence or clarity. It begins in discomfort, confusion, and stillness. When your energy dips, the world forces you to slow down, and in that slowness, truths you've been avoiding begin to surface. Maybe you're tired because you've outgrown the expectations placed on you. Maybe your soul is trying to redirect you toward a more authentic path. Maybe you've carried emotional burdens for so long that your spirit is finally asking you to release them. Low energy is often the body's way of initiating a reset, gently pushing you inward so you can reconnect with yourself. This phase can feel unsettling because transformation doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It arrives quietly, disguised as fatigue, disinterest, or the feeling of being stuck. But beneath that heaviness, something powerful is happening. Your old ways of thinking and living are breaking down. You're being invited to question what you truly want, what truly matters, and what truly nourishes you. You're being guided toward a version of yourself that is more aligned, more aware, and more alive. Think of it like the stillness before growth. Just as a seed must stay buried in darkness before it breaks open and rises, you too must pass through moments of low energy to emerge stronger. This period allows you to rest, recharge, and reorganize your inner world. Without these moments of slowing down, you'd remain trapped in cycles that drain you, unable to see new possibilities or make meaningful changes. Low energy forces you to stop long enough to listen to what your life has been trying to tell you all along. In this stage, your strength hasn't disappeared. It's shifting form. Instead of outward effort, your strength moves inward. It shows up as resilience, self-awareness, and the courage to pause. It shows up as the willingness to let go of what's familiar but unhealthy. It shows up as the capacity to face your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. This is strength in its rawest form, not the ability to push through everything, but the wisdom to step back and allow transformation to happen. As you move through this process, energy slowly begins to return, not the frantic, forced energy of survival, but a calmer, clearer, deeper vitality. You begin to feel inspired again, connected again, alive again. You start making choices from alignment rather than pressure, and every decision feels lighter. The transformation that began in exhaustion becomes the foundation for a more authentic and empowered version of yourself. So when your energy feels low, don't see it as the end of your strength. See it as the doorway to your evolution. It is the beginning of a new chapter, one where you rise not because you're forcing yourself to, but because you've finally made space to grow into who you were always meant to become. Energy returns naturally when you begin to honor your real needs and emotions, because the deepest source of fatigue is not physical effort, it is emotional neglect. When you ignore what you truly feel, suppress your inner voice, or push yourself beyond your limits to meet expectations, you drain your energy at its roots. But when you start acknowledging your truth instead of fighting it, your energy slowly rises again, not because you force it, but because you stop leaking it in places that no longer deserve it. Most people lose their energy by constantly betraying themselves. They say yes when they want to say no. They tolerate environments that feel heavy. They silence their emotions to keep the peace. They carry responsibilities that aren't theirs. Every act of self-abandonment takes a toll. Your mind works harder to pretend, your heart works harder to cope, and your body works harder to survive. Over time you feel exhausted not from doing too much, but from being disconnected from yourself. But the moment you begin honoring what you actually need, rest, solitude, boundaries, creativity, connection, or self-expression, something shifts. You stop fighting your own nature. You stop forcing yourself to live in ways that drain your spirit. You stop treating your emotions as inconveniences and start seeing them as guidance. This creates a sense of internal harmony, and the energy you once spent resisting your truth becomes the energy you use to nourish your life. Honoring your real needs also means recognizing which emotions you've pushed aside. Emotional exhaustion often comes from carrying unexpressed feelings, sadness you never acknowledged, anger you never released, disappointment you tried to minimize, fear you tried to hide. Every suppressed emotion demands energy to keep it buried. But when you allow yourself to feel what you feel without judging it, that emotional weight begins to lift. Your energy flows more freely because your inner world is no longer constricted or trapped under layers of unspoken truth. As you reconnect with your authentic self, even small changes create big differences. You might start protecting your time more fiercely. You might distance yourself from draining relationships. You might choose rest without guilt or ask for help without shame. These actions rebuild your energy because they create alignment between your inner world and your outer life. You begin living in a way that supports your well-being instead of stripping it away. Natural energy is not loud, frantic, or forced. It is steady and peaceful. It comes from being emotionally honest, mentally grounded, and spiritually connected. You don't have to chase it. It rises naturally when you stop abandoning yourself. You feel lighter, more centered, more alive. You sleep better, think clearer, and breathe easier. Your mind stops fighting, your heart stops carrying what isn't yours, and your body stops holding tension from unresolved emotions. And slowly, you realize that energy was never something you lost. It was something you blocked. The moment you begin honoring your real needs and emotions, you unlock the vitality that has been waiting within you all along. You return to yourself, and in that return, your energy returns with you. Listening to your inner signals leads to purpose, clarity, and authentic motivation, because your inner world is always communicating with you, even when your outer world feels chaotic or distracting. These signals often come in subtle forms: intuition, discomfort, curiosity, restlessness, fatigue, or sudden inspiration. Most people move too fast, think too loudly, or fear uncertainty too deeply to hear these messages. But when you slow down enough to listen, you discover that your inner world has been guiding you all along. Your inner signals exist for a reason. They are the language of your deeper self, The part of you that knows who you are, what you value, and what direction feels right, even when logic can't explain why. Ignoring these signals creates confusion. Listening to them creates clarity. Every time you pay attention to your emotions, instincts, and internal reactions, you uncover truths that your mind alone cannot reach. Maybe you feel drained in certain environments because they are misaligned with your growth. Maybe you feel anxious in certain relationships because something within you senses a lack of safety. Maybe you feel alive when you imagine a different path because your soul is pointing toward something meaningful. These signals are not random, they are invitations. When you honor them, your life begins to shift from obligation to purpose. Instead of following routines that drain you, you start choosing paths that energize you. Instead of doing what you should do, you lean into what resonates with who you truly are. Purpose does not appear through force. It emerges when your actions match your internal truth. When you follow the quiet pull inside you, you move closer to what feels meaningful and further from what feels empty. Clarity also grows each time you listen within. Most confusion happens when your mind and your inner signals are at war, when logic says one thing but your gut says another. By listening to that deeper voice, you begin to understand what actually matters and what doesn't. You see what choices feel aligned and which ones feel heavy. You learn to recognize when something feels forced versus when something feels natural. Clarity isn't about having all the answers, it's about knowing which direction feels true. Authentic motivation rises naturally from this place of alignment. Motivation becomes effortless when it comes from within rather than from pressure, fear, or external expectations. When your actions reflect your inner truth, you no longer need to constantly push yourself. You feel pulled forward. You wake up with a sense of purpose instead of dread. You take action not because you're forcing discipline, but because you're connected to something that feels real and meaningful. True motivation grows from the inside out. Listening to your inner signals is ultimately an act of self-respect. It's a way of saying, my truth matters, my feelings matter, my direction matters. When you treat your inner world as valuable, your outer world begins to align with it. You become more confident in your choices, more grounded in your values, and more connected to your purpose. And as you continue listening, life becomes less about surviving and more about becoming who you were always meant to be. So if you're feeling tired, drained, or disconnected, don't see it as a sign that you're failing. See it as an invitation. Your soul is speaking to you in the only way it can, through the rise and fall of your energy. Listen to it, honor it, trust it, because the moment you stop fighting your inner signals and start embracing them, your life begins to shift. Your clarity returns, your purpose resurfaces, your strength grows from the inside out, and you discover that the path you were searching for wasn't out there, it was within you all along. This isn't the end of your energy. This is the beginning of your awakening.